could it be that is an extraterrestrial solution to this? And I will have to say, absolutely, why not? Now, I don't know that, but I think it's a genuine possibility. To support this theory, I look at the spread of things like sky god myths in human history, and also brought forth some other connections that I believe strengthen this contention. One of them is the creative explosion that took place in our species around 40,000 years ago. I mean, certainly what we see at around that time is an exponential growth in human artistic genius, as well as in innovations in tool making and a lot more. So something clearly switched on with our species at around that time. Okay, so that's all I got to say on that whole thing. There's more in the book, but I'm just going to leave that here for now. Let's move on. The reason I brought this up is that if we are someone's project, like if there was some hypothetical extraterrestrial species that looked at us those thousands of years ago and said, close but not quite there, let's tweak them a little bit. Boom, here we go. Is that a possibility? If it is, then we might be somebody's project. You know, in the line of what Charles Fort about 100 years ago wrote, he said, I think we're property. Maybe that's true. Or maybe we're someone's project. If that is so, right, someone who decided that we would benefit from a genetic tweak, then what do we have to say about all the beings that people have been interacting with over the years? So let's start looking at that. I began by looking at encounters that people have had with completely human-looking entities. Or I should say entities that look human or looked human, but somehow or another didn't seem entirely human. So anyone who has studied this area knows that there are many such accounts like this. And they go back for thousands of years. And as a matter of fact, we've got some very interesting written accounts that go back at least several centuries. I have included several of those accounts in my book. None of those beings, this is very interesting to say, come across as hostile. Those types of encounters, the beings really come across mostly as standoffish, but they do seem to have had an occasional interest in monitoring the activities of our ancestors and very occasionally interacting with them. So combined with enough of good quality observations of UFO activity in ancient times, my conclusion is that at least one significant group has been here for a very long time.
Okay, so that's the first main group he talks about in the book, that there is a very ancient group, at least one, could be multiple ones, but he definitely thinks there's one, and this idea of a human-looking group, which there's kind of many versions of human-looking groups, essentially, but you know, a big popular one that's sort of big in the pop culture space of ufology is the Pleiadians. These very supermodel-like looking ETs, beautiful eyes, beautiful hair, that come apparently from the Pleiades star system. So that's one of the first main groups. And I believe later, and he discusses, but also in the meta-analysis, you know, a lot of people have talked about experiences with this particular type of group. So next up, he's going to jump to, I believe, the next group.
Now, one question that I ask myself, and I'm sure you are asking at some point, is why would they look human?
No, still
why would any
into the human groups
aliens look human? This is something that's really bugged me for a long time, and I've thought about it. And I've developed some thoughts on this that I put into this book. Most of that I can leave to readers of the book. You can follow my argument there. But suffice to say that my best guess at this time is that some of our ancestors may very well have been taken or, let's say, adopted by some other advanced group and essentially brought to that culture, to a completely different culture, a completely different society, and raised in that manner. That's one theory. And when I look over encounters that people have had in recent times with human-looking occupants of these craft, and there are quite a few of them, it becomes quite evident that those humans are very, very different from us. Even though they may look very much like us, there's a very different culture going on there. So I think that's one theory. Another theory, why would any aliens supposedly look human, is that whoever these beings were, they could make themselves look human, right? Through various illusions. You certainly hear stories of gray aliens, and I'm going to get to them in a minute, creating illusions in their appearance and visual illusions of different types. So maybe, and this is just a hypothesis, maybe that's what these other beings are doing. They're not actually human, but they made themselves look human. Okay. Or maybe that they actually are somehow human looking for reasons that are not clear to me, that I wouldn't understand why a species in another star system would have species that evolved to look that closely like us. Certainly the basic body plan, I think we can assume among successful technological organisms might actually look a lot like ours. It's totally possible. 2 arms, 2 legs, very handy. Eyes, 5, 6 feet above the ground, very useful. Having them forward looking, all of that. It's very probable, in my opinion, that successful species elsewhere probably would develop a body plan, maybe not that different than what we have here. So it wouldn't shock me in the least to find that there are humanoid aliens throughout the universe. And maybe some of them look very close to us after all. I don't know. My best guess, if I were to take, would be the first of my theories, which is that probably some of us, our ancestors in the ancient past, were actually scooped up, taken, tweaked, and that's their world now. But that may be something we never know the answer to. It's just my best theory at this time. However that may be, the evidence, in my view, is that the presence of these beings over a long, long period of time took place, let's say, at a very low level. In other words, I don't want to say a fully hands-off monitoring, but I do not personally see any significant evidence at all that we've been interfered with in our history. This is my conclusion. Other people may feel differently. But I do think that we've been monitored at a low level for a long, long time, kind of like an observation monitoring sort of a thing. That is until something very important happened, until our civilization went through a major transformation. And this transformation, which we are going through right now, has gotten the attention, in my opinion, of other groups. I mean, after all, in the last century, human civilization has completely transformed itself. We are now moving towards something that I've been calling the 4th stage of humanity.
All right. So
that's interesting. What, does he get into what he calls the 4th stage of humanity?
Yeah. I think he's going to go into that next, and I have that queued up. But essentially, I'll let him get to it. But essentially, it's a combination of a lot of the industrial boom, AI boom, a lot of these various precipice points all kind of coming to a head, and really feels that evolution doesn't happen, linearly. It has moments of great exponential growth, and he feels we're at one of those moments of exponential growth.
Like what we say about evolution. Evolution doesn't happen slow and gradually and in one pace. It happens in spurts and fits and large events. And a lot of that kind of shows that our environment drives a lot of the way we evolve, the way we adapt. Our phenotype, is really a lot more having to do, a lot less from how we were programmed from our ancestry and more having to do with the environment.
Yeah.
So that's pretty interesting. And, I've heard quite a few people, Michio Kaku also mentions where population density and scientific and technological advancement at some point will always arrive at this point. And it's interesting thinking that maybe humanoids came here long ago, and from where?
Yeah.
Right? And was it just because they had reached such a high peak in civilization that they were curious? Very, very possible. Is it also possible that they're doing exactly what Elon Musk is talking about today? Why don't we go colonize Mars? Why don't we start spreading our species out? And is that possible, and has that been done in the past? I surely believe it's possible, so has it been done in the past?
And I mean, you look at how old the universe is, and you really crunch the numbers, and as we're seeing now, we're seeing more and
you
more.
You mean like 7,000 years old, right?
Yeah, of course, bro.
Yeah.
But we're looking at how many habitable planets there are in the universe now, and how the likelihood is just going up and up that we're going to probably find life. And so if it's just one species that's got a, say, even a 500-year start on us, but a similar planet, to a similar environment to our planet that creates some sort of similar carbon-based humanoid figure, being like us, it's really not that crazy. It's not statistically that unlikely. It's probably leaning more towards more and more probable when we really more we see and look at and discover, looking, as we get telescopes that allow us to see farther and see more clearly. So if there's a species that's 10,000, 100,000, a million years ahead of us, that technology would look like magic. It would be indistinguishable. So I just think if that is the case, then these beings are not only advanced technologically, but also spiritually, culturally, on a lot of levels they probably have developed a very robust and holistic, something that's works very well, that allows them to travel very far, and the home planet and everything is probably very peaceful and taken care of and prosperous, similar to the idea of like Star Trek Federation, right? You move past war, you move past poverty, you move past these primitive things based on scarcity mindset, and you become this very advanced type 3, type 2 type species. And I don't think it's a stretch either to say that you wouldn't also make alliances similar to how we do on this planet with other advanced benevolent type beings. You would want to team up with like-minded groups diplomatically and to share resources. And it's the whole idea of, why this planet has started to thrive more, because we're exchanging trade from all over the world and resources and services, and people can travel. So, yeah, I mean, and so he's just starting to get into this particular group, the humanoid group. And he's going to dive deeper here now into what we were just discussing, though, this precipice point that we're at for humanity.
I want to talk a little bit about that because it's relevant for this topic here. What I mean by the fourth stage of humanity is that for all of our prior history, human beings have existed basically in 3 fundamental forms of society. Yes, there's been lots of variations, but the basic forms have been three types. First, there was hunting and gathering, which lasted for hundreds of thousands of years. And then, about 10 to 15,000 years ago, we began our first transformation to what I would call our second stage of existence, and that is the transformation to settled agriculture, sedentary agriculture, the agricultural revolution. This gave us our first cities, it gave us writing, it gave us the wheel, it gave us all the other inventions and developments of civilization. It gave us the Roman Empire, and it gave us all other human societies as well. It was quite a huge transformation, right? And that was our level for all the time since, until about roughly 300 years ago or so. And all of these don't happen overnight, obviously. They're a bit gradual. But that's when we went through our next transformation to what I call the third stage, and that is our world dominated by science and industry. So you're talking the scientific revolution and then followed not long after by the industrial revolution. And those changed our world just as radically as did the previous agricultural revolution. And this is when things really started picking up in speed, where our society really started transforming more rapidly. So by a little more than a century ago, let's say the turn of the 20th century, I mean, people were developing serious technology by this point, from railroads to telegraph, to the car, to the telephone, to airplanes, to electronics and powerful weapons like the atomic bomb and transistors and computers and space travel, the internet, smartphones. And now we are on the cusp of strong artificial intelligence and genetic engineering and really the digitization of our entire world and a lot more. And I'll just interject here. If some of you are wondering, like, well, why aren't you talking about this? I actually am talking about this all the time on my website. I haven't been as active here on YouTube, but I am very active on my site over at richardolanmembers.com, where I do weekly video podcasts and audio audio creations and articles. I do that all the time over there. So I'm talking a lot about the fourth stage of humanity and this transformation that we are going through. And it's an absolutely tremendous. Like, I think people are kind of getting it now, and you hear people talking about the Great Reset. And I think, yes, that is part of this, absolutely part of this. But this is even bigger than that, what I'm talking about. So now, because we are experiencing our next major transformation, the fourth stage of humanity. So what is that? It's a transformation unlike anything that we have ever been able to think about before. It includes not just strong artificial intelligence, not just genetic engineering, but it includes universal 5G technology and smart devices that are, unfortunately, from us, ending all traditional notions of privacy. This is something I've talked about here in the past. But also, it just includes much, much more. And while it threatens to take power away from individuals in all sorts of ways, it also is very likely going to give the human race as a whole tremendous power to do things it has never been able to do before. So I believe that this is why our development as a civilization has gotten the attention of anyone in our galactic neighborhood who has the ability to check us out. I think that is the main reason why the world during the 20th century experienced far, far greater numbers of UFO sightings and claims of alien encounters than ever before in our history. Yes, the advent of atomic weapons was clearly a signifier, but What I'm suggesting is these rapid developments in technology are like signposts towards something even bigger, and that is this transformation that I'm talking about.
Make sure y'all head over to benjosephstewart.com, become a member. You'll have access to the growing library of deeper dives where I talk about all the stuff that I really can't talk about on YouTube. Make sure you get involved in the Discord chat. That's where a lot of the conversation is happening, talking about new theories, being able to interweave into the greater conversation that is how we awaken infinity. That's our highest potential. And I just want to remind you, you are the most powerful technology ever known to creation. Wield it like an artist with a conscience.